That's why he moved off the particularity, the specificity of the sun. And then he said, can we be more specific? The sun is specific. If the sun arises from stuff, I asked him a very simple question he can't answer. Is that a physical process? Boom. Done. Over.
Jim Bob, the problem here is very simple, right? The stuff arises from stuff. When that stuff arises from stuff, there's a process. Who cares? This is totally off topic and unrelated. The stuff arising from stuff is more fundamental, as I've been saying over and over and over. If there's no arising from stuff, there's no processes to describe. So Jim Bob popped in Discord and really made a fool of himself, but there was something really interesting here. So rather than engaging with the fallacy claims that he made about my argument, he tried to go off on a red herring, which was just a complete waste of time. Without this stuff existing, no processes can occur. And without the stuff arising from other stuff, no processes can occur. It is more fundamental than processes occurring, Jim Bob, which is why it's a red herring. I told you multiple times it's more fundamental. Hopefully at this point you understand that the stuff arising from stuff is the more fundamental thing than the regularity of nature or the laws of physics. In this video, I've addressed Jim Bob's claims about my argument being question-begging, about it being a composition fallacy, and about it being a black swan. This should be pretty funny. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoy it, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. While I'm here, I just did a little preface on my stream. Taka, your post, I accept your challenge here that I have up on my stream. So I wanted to...
I was actually typing out a response to you. I actually have...
No need.
Yeah, I'm happy to read out everything I put together. I was actually writing out something.
Okay, can I just clarify something in the post that you made?
What's up?
Okay, is it possible to accept the principle in the reality we're in that stuff arises from stuff when we're referring to like a tree coming from the ground and not accept your argument?
You'd want to have some type of viable alternative, right? And so you were claiming that this...
Wait. Hold on.
You're not going to sit in here and ask 1,000 questions. I just put together...
I just asked one question.
I know, and I want to respond to what you
not
said.
Answering the question, though.
So I just responded to your question. So the question, or the comments that you made said that it was a composition fallacy, it's question begging, and you've already presented a black swan, right? And so on the question begging claim, I've already addressed that multiple times, but I'll address that again right now. So you claim that my argument is question-begging. It isn't question-begging because it's based on inductive reasoning and it's probabilistic in nature. The principle that stuff arises from stuff is grounded in consistent observation. It's not an assumption. If you believe this principle doesn't apply here, I'd love to see why. Do you have a viable alternative of any sort?
Is it possible to accept the principle inductively that we observe with things in the world right now and reject your argument or conclusion?
Well, I just explained how. You would want to have some type of viable alternative. It's an inductive argument. You can reject it, right? But you'd want to have some type of reasoning behind it.
Okay, it's an inductive argument.
And the reasoning that you provided for that was question-begging, a composition fallacy, and a black swan. You also provided circular previously, but it's not circular because it's an inductive argument, and so you backed off on that because I think you realized that. But I've been explaining why it's not a composition fallacy, but I'll do that in a moment. But I'm on the question.
You're going to do that in a moment, too?
Yes. So
you're going to just dodge these
without providing a viable alternative, the question-begging claim is nothing more than a fallacy. You're mistaking the structure of the argument as inherently flawed without addressing the substance of the argument. Now, on the composition fallacy claim, you're claiming that it's a composition fallacy, and as I mentioned previously, this is a serious misunderstanding of my argument. I am not saying that because individual things within the universe arise from pre-existing stuff, the universe as a whole must have done so. I'm making an inductive inference based on universal observation. Everything we've ever observed arises from pre-existing stuff. This principle applies to all phenomena within the observable domain, and thus it's reasonable to infer that the universe likely followed the same pattern. You have not provided a valid reason to treat the universe as an exception, so the argument remains probabilistic, not fallacious. Dismissing this without a counter-explanation, again, reflects a fallacy.
Okay, that's a lot of gish galloping there. Let me just take you one by one.
No, it's a direct response
to
you're not going to let composition fallacy claim.
If you're not going to let me respond, we can't have a conversation. You're just yelling over me. That's all you're doing right now. One thing at a time. I know you're very emotional on Sundays.
I've addressed all of your arguments multiple times,
You're just going to keep talking over me. You're going to keep talking over me. Okay. So a composition fallacy is stating what's true of a part. The parts is true of the whole, correct? Yes or no?
Yeah, it's stating what's true of the parts is true of the whole.
Okay. What are the parts in this case, inductively? Is that the items, the particulars we see in the universe?
So I will repeat myself.
So
I am making an inductive inference based on universal observation. Everything that we've ever observed arises from pre-existing stuff. This principle applies to all phenomena within the observable domain, and thus it's reasonable to infer that the universe likely followed the same pattern. This is an inductive argument, Jim Bob.
I didn't ask for the argument again.
This is not a composition fallacy.
You didn't even know what I asked you. You just reasserted the argument. I didn't ask you to reassert the argument. Okay, let's do something a little more simple for you. You said, given that all observed phenomenon arises from pre-existing stuff, would you say the behavior of stuff is a phenomena?
Absolutely.
Laws of physics,
so you're getting the Black Swan claim now, and I addressed that as well, and I'm actually going to answer all your questions about that there.
Dude,
because I the Black Swan claim part, you addressed I took the time to put together a well-structured and reasoned response to you, and
want to have a conversation or not?
You want to have a conversation or just yell? The Black Swan, because you're getting into the part about the regularity of nature and physics. And I'm about to explain to you, also while addressing how the Black Swan claim you made is another fallacy.
So, okay, I just asked you a simple question. Are the laws of physics a phenomenon, yes or no? It's just a yes or no question.
The laws of physics are emergent from the stuff.
No, that's assuming the thing in question, okay? So I didn't ask for you to reassert what you think. I said one question.
The stuff already existed to have the stuff.
One question. No. That's an assumption. No. We don't observe the laws of physics arise from stuff.
So I'm just going to read what I have structured for the Black Swan claim, and then you can decide if this doesn't address what you said there.
Okay, so you're not going to engage with it. You suggest that
you presented a Black Swan, or I'm sorry, you
suggest the laws of physics.
So
stay focused. Stay focused.
You
the laws of physics.
That you presented a Black Swan by complaining. I'm sorry, but you're interrupting me, and it's very hard to talk while
I'm interrupting you. But that's hilarious.
So you suggest that you presented a Black Swan by claiming that the stuff arises from stuff principle only applies after the emergence of the laws of physics. However, this claim, what?
No, I said they don't apply to the laws of physics. We don't watch or observe the regularity of nature arise out of the matter itself.
The regularity of nature is just our description of the way that stuff is.
I didn't ask you to describe it,
I was about to get there. So what I was saying is rejecting that principle, the stuff arises from stuff principle, without justification is more like denial than a reasoned argument. You're not actually thinking
You're
about
not addressing anything right now.
I am.
No. I asked you a simple question. You can't answer
that the laws of physics, while it's true that the laws of physics govern how stuff interacts with other stuff, and the regularity of nature reflects the results of those interactions, the principle that stuff arises from stuff is more fundamental and not dependent on those laws. Furthermore, there's no evidence.
Hold on, stop there, dude. Stop one thing at a time, dude. If you want to have a conversation, one thing at a time. Yeah, I know you're used to just yelling at people and them just like leaving.
Here, I just posted that too, so that you can read through that.
Dude,
too,
are you gonna let me respond? Okay, you just don't want me to talk. Okay.
You can respond. I would just let you know I posted.
Are you gonna let me talk? Okay, so you just said The laws of nature, right? The thing that's governing stuff coming from stuff. Did you just say you don't need that for the phenomenon of stuff comes from stuff? Did you just say that you don't need the regularity of nature for that?
The stuff arising from stuff is more fundamental. The regularity of nature is our concept of the way that the stuff that's been that's how we describe that stuff, right?
Okay, can stuff come from stuff without assuming an invariant
the results
regularity
of those interactions?
Nature?
Can stuff arise from what?
Dude, you gotta let me get my question out. You made this post asking us to jump on and talk with you about this, right?
Sure, sorry.
You called it a conversation. Right? That means you're asking me to talk, right?
I mean, you're welcome to talk. I'm not responding. Okay. Feel free to talk.
I asked you a question. Is it possible for the principle of stuff coming from stuff to exist or to be observed without the regularity of nature?
No, that would come after, because the stuff arises from stuff is more fundamental. Without the stuff arising from stuff, the regularity of nature would have never developed.
So the regularity of nature emerged after stuff comes from stuff?
It's
just said it developed, right?
It's a result of the interactions, which is the physics and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, physics is regularity,
also
though, right?
a result of, well, no, the regularity is going to be our... It's not a contradiction.
Yes, it is. I'll tell you how. If you're interested, are you interested?
Times.
Are you interested in the contradiction or not?
There's no contradiction there, but go ahead.
Okay. Are you interested in it?
Go ahead.
You just said the regularity of nature developed from stuff coming from stuff. Is stuff coming from stuff a process that requires some regularity?
No, it's more fundamental, right? Now, Jim Bob asked me the same question like 7 times, and so I was asking for clarification coming up. But I want you to pay attention how he keeps asking this question, because this is a tactic of presuppositionalists generally, where they'll try to get you to answer the same question over and over until they get the response that they want. Jim Bob was trying to lead me down a path here where the stuff arising from stuff principle would be a product of the regularity of nature. I was very clear with him, though, that it was more fundamental. So the reason this is more fundamental is because stuff has to arise from stuff for the uniformity of nature or regularity of nature to exist, because that would be a result of the constant interactions of that stuff. Now, coming up, I will say something like, that depends to Jim Bob. And the reason that I said that is because if he's talking about like specific processes, yeah, it could be a process, right? But ultimately the stuff arises from stuff would come before a process, right? The stuff would have to arise from stuff for a process to happen. If the stuff does not transform into other stuff, no process would happen. This makes the upcoming line of questioning that I subjected myself to for no reason by granting him some level of specificity is all a red herring. Stuff is
question is a yes
stuff.
Or no. It's a yes or no question.
I said no. The stuff arising from stuff is more fundamental.
Okay, is stuff arising from stuff a process? Yes or no?
I mean, it would depend on how
Depends now? Okay.
I mean, it depends on where we're at, right? That's not, you're just going off topic. I'm not going to do red
No,
herring.
not off topic.
To what I had read just a moment ago.
Dude,
so
this is bad. This is real bad.
I don't care, Jim.
You can't answer a simple question? Is stuff coming from stuff a process, yes or no? It depends. What are you, Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, it depends. Question, dude. While it's true that laws of physics govern how stuff interacts with other stuff.
So it's precondition is the laws of physics.
The regularity of nature reflects these interactions. The principle that stuff arises from stuff is more fundamental and not dependent on those laws.
You just contradicted yourself again. Okay.
No, it's the same thing I've been saying over and over. There's no contradiction. You have no idea what you're talking about, Jim Bob. You are incredibly confused.
Okay, that's just ad hom. Doesn't matter what you're saying here. The contradiction is this. You said stuff comes from stuff develops the laws of physics.
Stuff arises from stuff. I want you to clarify. Stuff arises from stuff, not stuff comes from
argument.
stuff. It's a yeah, my argument is stuff arises from stuff, and I've been telling you that for months.
Comes from. Okay,
it's not synonymous.
So different.
Arises is synonymous with transform or change states, and comes from you could be implying all sorts of other stuff with that I'm not implying. I'm saying that stuff arises from stuff. It changes shapes, it transforms, whatever.
Okay, dude,
right?
I understand.
It's not
I understand.
Coming from other stuff.
Dude, stop yelling over me and have a conversation, dude. Calm down. Is stuff arising from stuff a process?
I've already answered this multiple times. It depends on what you're talking about.
In your argument, is stuff arising from stuff a process, yes or no?
I mean, the explanation could explain a process, right? But it depends on what we're talking about there. That's
is it
totally
necessarily.
Jim Bob,
okay,
I am not engaging in red herrings and nonsense with you.
Oh, dude, give me an example of arising.
Jim Bob, do not
you're
interrupt
so bad
me.
faith.
I just destroyed you on the question begging claim, the
anything.
composition fallacy claim, and the black swan claim, and you're sitting here trying to dig into semantics with me.
I am not a
child, Jim Bob. This is a paradigm level debate, and these are granted. We have the ability to speak to each other. I'm not sitting here rejecting your ability to have any form of intelligibility when everybody knows you have no intelligibility of anything in the universe. You do not understand anything that's said to you, Jim Bob, ever, and it's super fucking embarrassing for you. And I'm sitting here explaining to you why your claims of fallacies are fallacies, and you're too fucking dumb to understand, Jim Bob.
More ad hom. Okay, more ad hom. Can you give me an example of stuff arising from stuff in your argument?
So, stuff for the law is rising.
What? Sorry, I'm talking to Breakfast Tacos. Can you give me an example in your argument? What would be an example of stuff arising from stuff?
Yeah, any observation ever.
One at a time.
Yeah, any observation ever.
One example. No, one example. I didn't ask for any.
Observation ever of 100% of the things that have been observed from the small scale to the grand scale arising from something else.
Suns. One example. Suns arising from what?
Stuff.
What stuff?
Everything arises from stuff, dude.
It's like helium gas and like chemical reactions.
That's great. That's better. Chemical reactions, helium. Okay, let's take the sun. You said the sun arises from stuff. I asked you, in that example, is that a process?
It depends on what we're talking about.
We're talking about the sun, you fucking idiot. Are we talking about the concept
arising, or are you talking about like some specific process of some type of chemical formation? Or
dude, holy
I don't want to go off on the tangent because this is going to go into some type of hyper-specificity that's going to go all over the place. You are too uneducated on any of these topics to have this discussion, because when I ask you the questions required to address your question, you're saying that I'm dodging. I'm saying maybe, but we have to be hyper-specific. What are we talking about here?
I'm trying to be. The sun. Is the sun pretty hyper-specific?
You're asking, is that a process? Are you asking, is the concept of the stuff arising
I didn't say concept.
A process? Or are you saying, whatever that process that we would describe, that natural formation process? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Is the natural formation process you're calling arising from stuff, in this case, the sun. When the sun arises from previous stuff that you're not even specifying what that stuff is, but it doesn't matter. Let's just call it material or physicality or something like that. Is the process, the physical process of stuff, the sun arising from previous stuff, is that a physical process? Is a very simple question.
This is stupid and off topic to everything we've been discussing.
So you're not going to answer?
I'm not going to answer this stupid nonsense, Jim Bob. So Jim Bob, I have destroyed... And this was the red herring that he was going into. So he wanted to say that the sun arising from stuff was a process, right? But the stuff has to exist for there to be a process, which is why this was a red herring and why I did not want to engage with this nonsense.
Why not just say yes?
I'm no point to answer stupid nonsense. I have destroyed all of his points.
I agree, but like, I mean, I just got in here. I think it's probably true, but why not just give an example like H2O, right?
I did. I said the fucking
H2O.
sun. I answered his question
yeah.
like 7 times.
Well, I think like you want to include that by stuff you mean that it is a process. And the thing that comes about, right, is caused by, in some form, the constituent things that are.
He's trying to get into some type of semantical word game where he says, like, you can't have processes without a mind or some crazy nonsense, right? I don't care about any of that stuff. None of that stuff.
That would be great if he said that.
Yeah, none of that stuff is related to any of what's been said, right? He claimed question begging. He claimed composition fallacy, he claimed black swan, and all of those were fallacies, which were demonstrated to him on this stream.
He also did the rusty teapot fallacy. I don't know if he meant to, but...
The black swan? You're making an inductive argument. Obviously, it's not a black swan fallacy if you say that it's inductive. I wasn't here, but I saw he was streaming, and then I realized it wasn't. I wish he didn't leave. I wanted to talk to him.
Did he leave?
Yeah.
So
he's such a lol cow. Like
I don't even get the point. So something came from something. Like, was this like infinite regression?
No, it's just to say that he has to say that ex nihilo creation happened, which is like completely alien and different than anything we've ever experienced before. So in a worldview where you need to commit to ex nihilo creation, why would you when there's other worldviews that don't need to commit to this strange mystical process? Right? That's the way I take Tucker's argument.
You can't actually prove that something was created, right? When we say something like somebody built a house, you could phrase it as like somebody created a house, but it's really just like remixing things that already
That's
existed.
what I take stuff from tough stuff means. That's what I take that to mean. And that specifically, right, is not what's happening with ex nihilo creation. Right.
So I don't get the discussion. It's like, this is what I have issue with like metaphysical topics. It's like,
well, it just seems metaphysically absurd, ex nihilo creation.
I spent time again addressing all of his failures of fallacies, all of his fallacies. And I explained to him why they're wrong, and he goes on a tangent. I'm not engaging on the tangent. I don't give a fuck about the tangent. That's not related to anything what we're talking about. The fact is, he claimed 3 fallacies again, and they were all fallacies. They're him misappropriating fallacies to ignore the argument and just saying that it's a failure of the structure of the argument or something rather than looking at the argument.
So there was a black swan fallacy. What else is there? Do you remember? Other 2?
Here is what I actually wrote out on the YouTube post for anybody that was listening. So Jim Bob, well, we'll start with Jim Bob. So Jim Bob said, I've already debunked stuff comes from stuff. Not only is it question begging, but it's a flawed inductive argument because it's a composition fallacy, stating that is what is true of the parts must be true of the whole. Further, I've already presented a black swan. We don't observe lawfulness, regularity of nature, and laws of physics arise from stuff. Ergo, stuff comes from
that's irrelevant.
Stuff. It's only a phenomenon once you have the laws of physics and regularity. It's a shit argument. Abandon it.
Look,
So
talking to like whether or not causation is real or it's human has nothing to do with stuff coming from stuff. It's still going to be the case that H2O comes from 3 molecules combined.
Right. And on the question, so my response was on the question begging claim. You claim that my argument is question begging, but I've addressed this multiple times. This isn't question begging because it's based on inductive reasoning and is probabilistic in nature. The principle that stuff arises from stuff is grounded in consistent observation, not an assumption. If you believe if you believe this principle doesn't apply here, I'd be interested to see why. Do you have a viable alternative? Without one dismissing it as question begging amounts to relying on a fallacy, mistaking the structure of the argument as inherently flawed without addressing the substance. And then on the composition fallacy claim, you claim a composition fallacy. But again, this is a misunderstanding of my argument. I am not saying that because individual things within the universe arise from pre-existing stuff, the universe as a whole must have done so. I am making an inductive inference based on universal observation. Everything we've ever observed arises from pre-existing stuff. This principle applies to all phenomena within the observable domain, and thus it's reasonable to infer that the universe likely followed the same pattern. If you haven't provided a valid reason to treat the universe as an exception, then the argument would remain probabilistic and not fallacious, so dismissing that would be a fallacy without some type of reasonable explanation there, right? On the Black Swan claim.
Can't be a black swan claim because you're not making an inductive argument. It's inductive.
Well, yeah, that's...
Eat and talk.
All right, and then on the Black Swan, all right, so I did include, this is an inductive argument first off, but you suggest that you presented a Black Swan by claiming the stuff arises from stuff principle only applies after the emergence of laws of physics. However, this claim is speculative and lacks supporting evidence. Rejecting the principle without justification seems more like denial than a reasoned argument. While it's true that the laws of physics govern how stuff interacts with other stuff, and the regularity of nature reflects the results of those interactions, the principle that stuff arises from stuff is more fundamental and not dependent on those laws. Furthermore, there is no evidence suggesting that something can arise from nothing. Even these laws and regularities arise from stuff. Without demonstrating how this could be possible, you're presupposing the universe is an exception without explaining why. The principle that stuff arises from stuff is more fundamental than the laws of physics or the regularity of nature, and by dismissing it without offering a valid alternative, it weakens your position. This is just another fallacy rooted in a misunderstanding of the fundamental nature of things, and that should have been expected, as you don't have any grounding for any form of intelligibility. that was my response.
Get wrecked, nerd. Got fucking dominated, dude.
Absolutely dominated.